going to trump you on that because the best review she ever gave a book was the book review she gave for Drive. Do you remember it?
No, but it's a great book.
It was a one-line review. She said, James Salas has written a perfect book, and that's all I have to say.
Well, okay. You win. No, you win. Jim wins.
He does.
That's a great review.
That was all she said. It was sort of fit the book, right?
Right.
Just enough notes.
It does. What I love about Drive is you're in the book.
Right.
The book starts, you're in the book, which is not easy. It's not easy to pull that off well.
Very difficult. What I really hope, this is one, and we don't have any money coming with the movie, but I really do hope it's sold to Hollywood for Hugh Jackman. I truly hope they make the movie.
That's actually interesting casting. That's good casting, I think.
I think it is too, but I'd really like to see it.
I'd like to see it too. It'd be interesting to see that movie. I think I read a lot of people who I guess we both read. I know you've had Peter Spiegelman on the show. I would love to see, Red Cat made into a movie.
Red Cat would be really good. I'm not sure Black Maps would work so well.
No, but I think Red Cat would.
He's one of the most interesting plotters I know. His books always go somewhere I don't think they're going.
Well, the funny thing is, I always say this, one of the great perks of being me is that I get to help, not sometimes help, but most of the time be an observer to watching my friends work. Because Peter and I are very close. Megan and I are close. Jim Fusilli and I are close. So it's interesting watching people do their work from close up and see how it's different from how I do my work. And Peter is he's a very interesting guy to be friends with.
I'll bet he is. I think he's absolutely fascinating. It's so nice that, because I love these authors as much as you do. And I see them at the end of the product. So you're right. We have a very different, probably,
it's great.
perspective on it.
Megan and Peter are first readers of mine.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so I love that. I read their stuff, they read my stuff, and it helps because I trust their opinion.
You need to go back and get Jim Fusilli to crank one out.
Well,
I'm so unhappy with it.
Word is, he signed a contract to do a Dutton Young adult mystery.
Really?
Yeah, so that should be out next summer, I believe.
Good. I thought that he wrote a couple of books. I mean, for all the post 9/11 books that there are about, people who lived in New York wrote about it.
Closing time.
Yeah, I really thought that Jim wrote one of the best. It was just
because it's not about it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. It's in the background, and although I love Shira, I thought that was the differential. There was that,
Yeah, hers was about it. And SJ2, I read her, but sometimes I was an early reader on Absent Friends. It is really one of the things I delight in.
I can see that being you would be, I
fun.
Can't do that. I have more hair, but whatever. Well, listen, let's talk about Mo Prager here. He's an interesting guy. One of the things I think is fun is that tension. You have two older brothers.
Yes,
and
I do.
he is in business with his brother, and kind of to their surprise, they're making a big success out of the wine trade in New York, running these kind of upscale wine boutique shops. And was part of his contract with his brother is if there's a case that appeals to him, now that he's off the NYPD, he can go do it.
Right, and it's funny is that tension is a very important aspect of the books for me. And sometimes I think readers read past that. Obviously you didn't, which makes you such a wise reader. But I think people sometimes read past that. But that tension, that friction between them is very important to show who Mo is.
Oh, I think it is too. And then in Soul Patch, your new book, you've got him in a sort of dreadful state of angst about not just his work, his life, his marriage, whatever. He's a very complicated guy. Yeah,
and I like to think I'm a complicated person, and I think characters should be complicated. Characters should be as complicated as we are. I mean, in certain books don't suit that. The way I write is suited towards complicated characters because you're hearing you're hearing Mo's internal dialogue most of the time. Yes, he's talking to you, but he's talking to himself. Not to evoke, I promise this is the last time I'm using Spiegelman's name today, This is
He
Peter
paid you before you came, right?
Right. Peter, the bill is coming. He says it's not like Mo is talking to the audience, but Mo is talking to you.
I think that's true. I think it's a very personal kind of thing when you read it, that you are walking along with him. Another thing about him that's interesting is kind of the defining moment of his life as a detective is that first case he worked back in the territory you've taken him to in Soul Patch, where the little girl
Right.
goes missing. You want to tell us?
Yeah, sure. Mo is a guy who, he even says it. He's not a dreamer. He has always hitched his wagon to other people's dreams. In fact, the only reason he became a cop at all was on a drunken dare from one of his friends. And then he gets hurt, doing something stupid, slipping on carbon paper. And it's 10 years into his career, and he's gone. And now he realizes, I really missed that job. And he was never very good at it, and he never done anything bad.
You mean he wasn't a great cop?
He wasn't a great cop. He was in uniform. He was in the bag. That's what he did. He did his job. But he did one outstanding thing the whole time he was on the job, and that was a little girl went missing in Coney Island. Her name was Marina Canseco. She was abducted and abused, and it was 3 or 4 days after, and as I write every book, it had become a search for her. It had silently morphed from a search for her to a search for her remains. And Mo was driving around with some off-duty firemen, and it struck him to look up. And he looked up and he saw one of those old, which is very New York, a water tower on top of a building. And they started searching the water towers in Coney Island, and in the third or fourth one, they found this missing girl still alive, with a fractured skull and a broken bone, but that was it. And the frustrating thing was, it was during the time when the city was broke. So he never made detective. Now, most of the time when you do something like that, you'll make detective. So it's the great frustration in his life is that he feels he deserved the gold shield and didn't get it on merit. And then through the course of the series, of course, people know how much he wants that gold shield and what it means to him. So people are constantly offering it to him, but for prices he's never willing to pay.
That's very true. It's an interesting repeating theme. Now, I will share with you something you did for me. When we went to New York maybe last year and took our little granddaughter, we went down and took a Circle Line tour. From the Hudson down over there.
Around Manhattan.
And we chose to do the one that went all the way around, and it was wonderful. I loved the north part of the island, which you don't really see very often when you're up north of the cloisters and
Washington Heights.
And it was great. But the guide said, as we're all looking at the skyline coming back, he said, "I want everybody to look up." He said, "And what do you see on top of all these buildings?" And we're all, Mariah's age town, we're all looking up, and he said, "Water towers." Because, that's how it works in New York. It's, the water comes down and the water goes up, and the pressure in New York, and I'm thinking to myself, aha, it's Reed and the body and the whole thing. Right. And, that, unfortunately, is the image now that sticks in my mind when I look up at New York water towers. I'm thinking, who's inside?
Right. Well, what water you're drinking when you're in that building.
So Mo, anyway, here he is. He's in business with his brother, and he's on... I'm trying to remember. This is his second marriage?
No, this is his first. This is her second marriage.
That's it.
They had a Katie is his wife.
Right.
And she had been married briefly to a neighborhood guy, although she grew up in slightly upstate New York, away from the city.
And she's Catholic.
She's Catholic.
And he's Jewish.
And he's Jewish. But then when they get married, she converts of her own free will. She had lost one brother, was a Navy pilot who was shot down in Vietnam. And, of course, she loses her other brother, which is also one of the central themes of all the Mo books, right. Because it is while he is looking for this missing brother that he meets Katie. And that relationship is established, plus the secret, which hangs over all the books.